2017, two divers went into a cave for a technical exploration dive, when everything went horribly wrong, leaving one man struggling to find a way out and the other man struggling to breathe in an air pocket while he blindly hoped that the other man would get help in time. After 60 hours, he was faced with a horrifying option: die a slow, painful death or end it quickly. This is the story of the Piqueta Cave disaster. On Saturday, April 15, 2017, Cisco Gracia entered a cave in Mallorca, Spain. Gracia was a geology teacher that had grown up in the area exploring caves and scuba diving. He was a member of a team of scuba divers that would explore and map the systems of caves of Mallorca, Spain. These caves are extremely popular for tourists and divers alike. Of course, there are many caves along the coast that tourists may visit, but there is also a labyrinth of caves that can only be explored by diving. It was Gracia's mission to explore these caves for future divers, but also as a geologist to map the history of Mallorca. Gracia and his dive partner, Guillem Mascaro, entered the cave system in Mallorca to explore Sa Piqueta. As Sa Piqueta is approximately 1 kilometer from the entrance to the cave system, it took the divers an hour to swim to the exploration site. They were prepared with tanks to get there, tanks to explore, and tanks to bring them back. They also each had an hour of reserve air in case something went wrong. While they explored, Gracia collected rock samples, while Guillem charted a nearby chamber. When their exploration phase tanks were nearly out of air, the divers headed back toward the entrance when everything went horribly wrong. The divers were separately headed back when they surprised each other at a junction. The meeting stirred up silt from the bottom, causing a silt out. There was a large amount of silt that had settled at the bottom of the cave. As the two divers came together, their motions disturbed the silt, causing the small particles to plume up into the cave. Visibility was now nearly zero. This is a fairly common event that divers prepare for, especially in these particular caves, where it is extremely easy to kick up the silt. In cases of low visibility, and so divers don't get lost, they run a guideline from the cave entrance so they can follow the line back out of the cave. With the visibility now down to zero, they would have to rely on pulling themselves along this line to get to clear water. There was no line where they had left it. They searched for the line by feel for over an hour, using up precious air in the process. The two surmised that the line must have either slipped or a rock had fallen on it and it had broken. Either way, they were blind, had no guideline to lead them out of the cave, and now were almost out of air. They had used up all of the air for their planned journey, including some of their emergency air. Gracia knew of an air pocket in a nearby chamber and dragged Guillem there. They were able to rest and talk through their limited options. They know at this point that they only have enough air for one of them to attempt to make it out, but one of them would have to wait in the chamber, hoping that the other one could make it out. They decided that Guillem would go. He was skinnier and used less air. Gracia was also used to breathing cave air with higher concentrations of carbon dioxide. He did this fairly often in the cave system. Air in the standard atmosphere comprises 0.04% CO2. The concentration in the cave was nearly 5%. Concentrations this high can cause severe reactions, including hallucination and death. Once they decided on who would go, they had to decide on a route to get out. They reviewed their map of the cave system. They decided on a somewhat longer route that would be easier to traverse. Guillem would have to make it through the first part without a guideline. But if he went the right way, he would get to a line that would lead him to the cave entrance. After Guillem left, Gracia decided to explore the chamber. He didn't know how long he would be there, or if he would ever get out. He took off his equipment and began exploring. He found that the chamber was 80 meters long, 20 meters wide, and the ceiling was 12 meters above the water. He found a large flat rock to rest on, and most importantly, found that the surface water was drinkable. 2 of his lights were dead, and the third was low. He would have to sit in darkness to conserve the battery. He reportedly only turned on the light to climb down to get a drink or to relieve himself. Otherwise, he was in complete darkness, all alone. Gracia was alone in the dark with only his thoughts. For the first 8 hours or so, he stayed positive, thinking that Guillem would make it out and get help, but as the wait grew longer and longer, the positive thoughts faded. He began to think about Guillaume and that he had drowned, and if he did, no one would know where he was. Then he thought about his children. If Guillaume had drowned, he would never see his children again. The longer he was in the chamber, the more he felt the effects of the low oxygenated air. He had a pounding headache, was exhausted, and began to hallucinate. He would see lights coming from the lake and hear bubbles of an ascending diver. But when he looked, there was nothing there. At one point, well after he had lost track of time, he heard noises from above him. He thought he heard tanks being filled with air for divers to come rescue him. But he realized that they must have been trying to drill through the rock to get to him. Hearing this, he realized that Guillaume must have made it out. They must be looking for him. His mood improved, but he was still trapped. As quickly as the noises started, they stopped, and Gracia was left alone again in the darkness. This was his darkest point. At this point, he thought he was dead. His light would soon run out, and he wouldn't be able to climb down to get water. He would die alone in the darkness. He was in an extremely dark place. He swam over to his equipment and grabbed his knife. If he was going to die, he was going to do it quickly. He did not want to suffer. He did not want to wait. He wanted to die on his terms. He grabbed his knife and swam back and laid down on the flat rock. As he laid on the flat rock, thinking about what he was going to do next, he started to hallucinate. Again, he saw lights. Again, he heard bubbles. But this time when he looked, a diver surfaced. Immediately, he recognized the diver and realized that he wasn't hallucinating. This was his friend, Bernat Claymore. Gracia, overwhelmed with joy, jumped into the water and embraced Bernat. After 60 hours, he had finally been saved. It took 8 more hours to get Gracia out of the cave, but they now knew where he was, and he was in constant contact with other people. They didn't know if he had water or had eaten, so they brought him water and food. He later recounted that these 8 hours were some of the happiest hours of his life. They also gave him air enriched with oxygen and slowly guided him out of the cave system. When he emerged from the cave on Monday, who else but Guillaume was there to greet him, giving him a huge hug. However, Gracia wasn't out of the woods yet. He had been extremely close to death. His temperature was only 32 degrees centigrade and 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermia sets in at 35 C and 95 F. Gracia had severe lack of oxygen and was hypothermic. Overnight, at the hospital, he was given pure oxygen to breathe and his temperature was raised to normal levels. Gracia was trapped for so long because the rescue divers had to wait for the silt to clear before they could reach the chamber. In the low visibility water, they couldn't find the chamber. The noises that he had heard were the rescue team trying to drill into the chamber to get him food and air. They quickly realized that they wouldn't be able to drill quickly enough. They knew that they had to get to him through the cave or he would be dead by the time they drilled through. Gracia made a full physical recovery, but still struggles with it to this day. But he doesn't let this get him down. This drives him. Diving is in his bones. He still dives to this day, and he has even returned to visit the chamber that he spent so many terrifying hours in before. I hope you enjoyed this story. If so, please like, leave comments, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.